Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Single Parents Podcast, Single Parents Daily Podcast.
Yes.
God,
It's okay. It's a tongue twister.
it is. With your host,
Chadi Dunmore.
and Evan DeMarco. Super stoked. We've got the Dad Edge Alliance in the house, Larry Hagner. There's been an interesting evolution of his story, and we kind of want him to talk about it because I think you've kind of gone through a little bit of a rebranding as of late. So just, Larry, give our listeners a background of who you are, what you got going on, and why we've got you on the show today.
Well, first of all, I'm honored. Thank you so much for having me on. One day I woke up and realized I knew everything about being a father. And I was like, I have to share this with the world.
That's awesome.
It was actually the polar opposite of that. It just came out of like pulling my hair out, like struggle. So yeah, I mean, a lot of this actually started like when I was a kid. So, just to kind of give you some context, and I mean, I don't come from the traditional childhood background or anything like that. My mom and biological father were married way back in the day. I'm 45, and I know I don't look a day over 44. So thank you. I appreciate it. But so they were married for 4 years. They had me in 1975. And about 9 months into that whole thing where I came about, my dad and mom got divorced. I think it was pretty ugly. So they got divorced, and I never knew him. I don't have no recollection of him. Kind of a funny story. When I was 4, I still remember this like it was yesterday. I was in preschool, still remember this. I remember men coming to pick up their kids from preschool. And I was like, oh yeah, I know what a dad is. Like that's the dude, the dude that comes pick up their kids. And I just figured at that age, like the moms go out and find a dad. Like I had no other, and I didn't think I was missing out on a thing. It was just was what it was. So I'll never, ever forget the first time my mom brought a man home. And I think that they had been dating for a while. They worked together, and I'll never forget it because 1979, he was wearing a 3-piece suit, the double Windsor tie, briefcase, no iPads, trench coat, mustache, feathered hair. He was like a data software engineer. And he comes walking in, and my mom introduces me to him, and I was so excited. And the first question I asked this poor guy was, "Are you going to be my dad?" Like,
that's so horrible and sad.
I know. My mom was like, "Nice job, wingman. Now he's going to leave." No, I'm just kidding. But but anyway, a year later they did get married, and I was so excited, man. It was really cool. I was in the wedding, and they were married till I was 10, so about 5 years. And every year they were together, it got progressively worse. He drank a ton. My mom drank a lot. They fought really, really bad. And I just saw their marriage, their relationship just crumbled. He had a hot temper. So that showed up in, verbal abuse, physical abuse, all that good stuff. He left when I was 10, and I haven't seen him since. So I became really curious at that age. I'm like, well, where did I come from? Now that I understand everything, like I know he wasn't my dad. I was at the wedding. Like what happened? And my mom was like, well, I was married before. Here's a photo album. Here's your dad. So a couple of years later, I was 12. I ran into him by accident. Wasn't planned.
What?
Yeah.
How does that happen? How do you just run into, hey, wait a minute. Are you my dad? Are you going to be my dad?
Are you going to be my dad? Just going up to random people, right? You going to be my dad? I need one. No, but I ran into him at a rec center that was by my house. So, yeah, and his name's Larry. My name's Larry. There's not many people named Larry who are under 70 these days. So not the most common name. So anyway, we hung out for a little bit. He was remarried, had a 2-year-old son, another one on the way. And I'm sure you guys have been dating someone, right? Where it's like, I don't know if this person is that into me anymore. Like you just sort of feel it, like they're kind of pulling the fade away. Like it's a little tense, a little weird. Well, that's kind of the way it got after like 5 or 6 months. Like I could tell something was straining him. He was kind of cold, kind of distant. And then we had the conversation. He was like, yeah, sorry, like bad timing for me, So we went our separate ways. And that really messed with me as a kid. And failed 8th grade, had to do 8th grade twice. I emotionally overate. Wow. I was fat, fat kid. And my mom got remarried a couple more times. There was always men in between. They were always the same guy, just like, alcoholics, and just, it was crazy. So I'll finish up here. When I was 30 years old, 2 things happened. Number one, I became a dad for the first time. So I have a 14-year-old, 12-year-old, 6-year-old, 4-year-old. Did I miss anybody? All boys. Yeah.
All boys.
Wow.
How many kids do you guys have?
I have one daughter. She's 14, and my
Right.
boyfriend has 2 kids, 7 and 9.
Okay.
And one daughter is 6.
Okay. So I'll just, did you guys go to college?
I did. I didn't graduate, but
That's
I did.
okay.
Yeah.
But you've been to fraternity parties, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Raising.
sorority parties.
Okay. And Evan?
And then some.
I've only been to sorority parties.
Oh, good for you.
I
I'm very
grew up
jealous.
in Miami. I went to all different type of parties.
Okay. So raising 4 boys is like a drunk fraternity party that you never leave.
Oh, boy.
That's about the best way I
can
could
only
describe.
imagine.
I say things out loud that I never thought I'd say to any other human being on the planet, but it happens. So I had my first son at 30, and I was in a Starbucks for a business meeting, and who comes walking in first morning coffee? My father. And I knew exactly who he was. He hadn't changed much. It had been 18 years. He hadn't changed much. And I was like, holy crap, that's my dad. And one of the coworkers I was with, she was like, holy crap, that's your dad? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what are you going to say to him? I'm like, nothing. I was, it's been, last time I saw him, he told me like it wasn't working out for him anymore. And what am I going to say? Hey, I'm getting the white chocolate mocha. What are you getting, Dad? You know, like
Caramel macchiato, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, she brought him over and we ended up talking. Here we are 15 years later. My 12-year-old has a football game tonight. My dad's going to be there. And we have a relationship. I wouldn't say it's a dad-son relationship. It's not the traditional, but it's more of a friendship. But here's what I'll tell you where Dad Edge and Good Dad Project came from. I mean, I was lost. I was so lost. I wanted to be a good father and I wanted to be a good husband. I was failing, miserable. I had no patience, hot temper. My marriage was mediocre at best, and that's probably being pretty generous. And when my son, my oldest was 6, my 4-year-old was 4 at the time. He's 12 now. I had a really dark night and I got mad at my 4-year-old. I spanked him. He hit the ground. That's really uncomfortable to share. But when I went to help him up, he like just shuddered with fear. And when I saw that, I no longer saw my son. I saw myself, and I was like, this has got to change. It's got to change. And so it was that moment I just surrendered. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. So it was that night I went on Facebook. I created a page called Good Dad Project. I was the project. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go out and learn something new every day. That's all I'm going to do because I suck at this and I just need to learn. So I did that. That turned into a blog in 2013. That turned into a podcast and a book in 2015. Podcast has been around for 5 years. We've done 600 episodes, and it has been a front row seat to an absolute invaluable education. And things are so much better now. I will never say that they're perfect because raising 4 boys and being married to a woman for 17 years, it's work, but it's wonderful work. But I'd probably be divorced right now if I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of things would have happened if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know where to begin. It's so heavy what you carried from 4 years old to where you were at now, because the in and out of your dad coming in and out, all the other men that played a role or a father role per se, and then becoming a dad. That's heavy. That's really heavy.
So you've done over 600 episodes. You're learning something new every single day. Like what's the dad edge? How do you boil this down into a parenting philosophy? And I will say this, we are all struggling right now. COVID has reintroduced gaps in our parenting skills that we didn't know we had. I can't tell you the number of parents that we've probably all talked to. Like, I was so looking forward to my 8 hours a day when my kid went back to school. Like, how have you taken 600 episodes, 10 plus years of doing all of this, and give us some tips? Give me some tips, man. I'm hurting over here.
So first of all, beat your children when they step out of line.
Wait,
that's
I'm
rule
doing it
number
right.
1. That's right. Grab something heavy like a wrench. No, I'm kidding. So no, like I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. You know, we started a mastermind group in 2016 for fathers called Dad Edge Alliance. And it's now grown to almost 500 members. And what I can tell you is that has been an unbelievable education. Just hearing the hearts and the souls and the minds of men, what they need, what they're struggling with, what they're good at, just the different experiences.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you is we've really encapsulated it into what we call the 5 dimensions of being a man, husband, father. Those are managing your personal finances as a family. The divorce rate in the US is 50%. 50% of those divorces are due to financial stress. People just don't know how to manage their money. We're just not taught. So that's one. Second one is optimizing physical, mental, emotional health, spiritual health as well. So, you're in the fitness industry, and Evan, you look like you can throw around some serious weights as well. And I think that's so important for a man to take care of his physical being, his mental and emotional being, because unfortunately when we are fathers, like that's the first thing we shelve is like, I can't take care of me. I got to take care of all these other people. And that's such a disservice, because when we do take care of ourselves, we can selflessly serve on a more profound level, if we're taking better care of ourselves. Yeah.
In fact, on that note, I want to find the person that said a dad bod was kind of like the acceptable thing and just bitch slap them.
Well, I think that Dad Bod is like way back, and it's like,
no, this was just recently,
really?
like the dad bod thing, and it was just
I mean, everybody has their own preference on what they find attractive, but being physically healthy is important.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I think it gave dads a free pass to say like, okay, I can just let myself go a little bit. And I agree with you 100%, Larry. Like, if you don't make physical, mental, emotional health a priority, then everything else suffers down the line.
Yeah,
and
it does. Yeah.
Like, how did we allow something as cliched as the dad bod to permeate our culture? And it sounds benign in the beginning, but it's really not.
No, you're exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
It's so funny. He used the words he used, benign, because he's such a smart guy over here, but it's so very true, because I grew up in a Latin household, and fried foods and staples and just muscles is very taboo. Like, guys don't want women, or the Latin community, they don't want women having muscles. It's not feminine, or taking care of themselves. As soon as you say that you're going to work out, they're like freak out. They're like, you're going to get muscles, you're going to look too masculine. And then the men in the industry, the men and most ethnic men in general have their health rate. It's like diseases are high, cholesterols, heart disease. My dad, he passed away 2 years ago with literally every vital organ just shut down. It started off with his heart and kidneys, because I have an existing kidney disease from him. And then it was everything else, from like smoking and drinking and eating horrible, diabetes. It was like, it got to a point that his body just said, it just can't do this anymore. And me having lupus, I know that people just, working out is essential for me. I will be sick, and it's so much more than just looking the part. I would be sick, and I would be a horrible mom. How would I be able to take care of my family if I couldn't provide? And I love that you have that as a foundation for so many parents, especially dads, because I feel like that's so important, and no one makes it important anymore. They don't. They're just kind of like self-love and kind of help, and I love the self-love concept, but I feel like people are using that as a free pass, like you said, to just Netflix and chill. And it's not okay. Like, you got to take your ass out of the house and go for a walk and bring your heart rate up. And it's so important. I talk to my family about that all the time, and I love that you just said that.
So that's two.
Thank
Give
you.
us 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah. So, and first of all, thank you for that. Yeah. And I kind of a joke. If I'm kind of off, like my kids will be like, "Did you work out today?"
Yeah.
No. Yeah, we can tell.
Same way.
Why don't you go for a run, Dad?
Yeah. Beat it. Go kick rocks outside.
Yeah, go do something. But so anyway, yeah. So creating a legendary marriage. That's number 3. An epic connection with your kids, and being a leader in your business, being a leader in your career, and leading yourself. Those are really what's on the minds and hearts of men, without a doubt. And unfortunately, I mean, that's where we get the least amount of training. Like, we don't know how to manage our money. We certainly don't know how to create a legendary marriage. Connection with our kids, we're doing the best we can.
What does that even look like?
Creating a legendary marriage?
I asked
Yeah,
that
I want to hear
because
more
you've
about
got
that.
2 people who are divorced, and
Right.
Having talked a lot about this on another podcast of mine recently, we kind of look at marriage as this happily ever after Hollywood type of thing. But, and I think we've all been so conditioned to think that that's what it is. And when it's not that, that's why the divorce rates are where they're at. You know, you said 50%. In some places it's encroaching on 60. Military, it's above 60. If you get married a second time, you're at 64%. If you try to go for a third time, forget about it. You might as well just sign the marriage and the divorce paperwork at the same time. So it's, you know, when you talk about a legendary marriage, I'm really inspired by what you said, but I think as that might pertain to a lot of our listeners looking to reemerge into the dating scene, ultimately, you know, reemerge into a marriage or, you know, a solid relationship. That's a tool set that I think so many of our listeners are like, how do I create that? Because they clearly didn't have it on the first go around.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you said it right there. You know, it's a toolkit. It's a skill. I mean, so many of us, and me included, I'm sure you guys as well. When you first get married, you're like, well, I love her, so this should work out, right? And not only that, but, oh, wait a second, it's kind of hard. Well, maybe we're not meant to work out. Like, you know what I mean? And so what I've learned, and I think they actually live in your area. So Lance and Brandy Salazar, they wrote the book Miracle Morning for Couples. So they actually have this curriculum, and I always like to reference them. He's one of our coaches in our mastermind, but I really like to reference them because it's so simple and it's so applicable. So they have what they call the 4 pillars of a legendary marriage, which one is self-care. And I'll kind of describe each one too. The other one is partnership, friendship, lovers. And then underneath all that is the foundation of communication. So I'll just kind of briefly explain. Self-care, that's, you know, you take care of you, I take care of me. You know, like my wife and I give each other our space we're both active, we're both fitness people as well. And it's so important for me to give her that hour. She gives me that hour. That's so important to bring our best selves to the marriage. The partnership, that's like the business of marriage. You know, that's like, okay, who does the finances, who makes the money, who does this chore, schedules, investments, roles, like who's bringing what to where, kid, you know, all these things. Because unfortunately, if you look at that partnership loop, that's where 50% of the arguments happen, because that's where the expectations lie. So it's like, I can't believe I'm making dinner again. Wasn't it her turn?
Yeah, me washing the dishes again.
Right. And then like, that's the loop right there where those bricks of emotional resentment just start to build. So if you're open and you communicate like, hey, what's your role? What's mine? Of course, these are dynamic and they can change, but let's talk about them. So I know what you're doing and you know what I'm doing. So that's partnership. Friendship, that's like, hey, are we buddies? Like at the end of the day, do we like each other? Do we have a deep knowing of each other? Do we have things in common? Do we talk easily? That kind of thing. So that is a big one. And then of course, lovers, which if you're a guy, you just want to skip over all 3. Get to that one, right? So
let's go straight into touch.
That's right. I know we haven't talked all day, but how
girls
about
feel that way too.
Touch take your pants off.
Touch is my number 1 love language, but I'm Latin, so there you go.
There you go.
I love that. That's amazing. That's, I think, you know, not only single people can, but I think all people in general. I mean, couples and single people.
Well, yeah, clearly these are not things that are talked about. But you said there's the underlying communication piece, which is, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Are we going to talk about communication? That's kind of cool, right? We just
I think we should grunt about
it. Like cavemen. So, you know, communication, I don't think you can communicate enough. So here's a couple of just very simple premises, very simple approaches, and just a foundation of communication. So for the most part, I think it's pretty safe to say that most humans interact, they communicate because they have 2 things: expectation and agenda. You know, Evan, if I come to you and I want to have a conversation with you, it's probably because I want a certain outcome to happen, right? And that's the same thing with our marriages, right? So if I go have a conversation with Jessica, it's usually because I expect something and I want some sort of outcome. Same with her. And especially if we're not in alignment on something or we disagree on something, it's like, what I really want to do is I want her to see my point of view. That's just human nature. We want to convince people to be on our side, not theirs. So entering any conversation with expectation and agenda is usually pretty disastrous. But if you can enter every conversation with appreciation and curiosity, it's impossible to have expectation and agenda if you're curious and appreciative. So like, for instance, if my wife is doing something and I'm like, that's really odd, or saying something that's really odd, or, you know, she's she's really feisty with the kids because it's like homeschool, right? And I'm like, wow, that's really. So instead of me going up to her and be like, why are you so upset? Like, why are you so mad? Why are you always yelling at the kids?
Yeah.
You know, like, because here's the thing. However somebody is operating, whether they're the husband or the wife, whether they work with you, whether they're friends with you or whatever, however they're operating, it makes total sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
It might not make sense to you, but it makes sense to them. So like if my wife is just firing on these kids and frustrated, it makes sense to her. She's probably had a buildup of it all day. So instead of me coming at her like, why are you so angry? Like, why are you so upset with the kids? Why don't you just, take a break? That's like one of the most disrespectful things you can do. But instead I would go to her and be like, feels like you're pretty overwhelmed right now. What's going on? You okay?
Mm-hmm.
And she'd be like, oh my God, these kids they're driving me crazy. Like all this stuff is going on. And so instead of being the typical man, and here's another simple thing to do, but it's out of most men don't do it. We want to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, oh my gosh, these kids, like, I can't keep them on task. They're not doing their work. And like, I don't even know how to teach math and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, hang on. Here's what you need to do. Okay. Like sit them down. YouTube is great for math. Like, why don't you YouTube some stuff? And,
Yeah.
and you know what, if he doesn't do the work, then take his iPad away. Like I immediately start, and as a man, I'm like, well, I have to tell her like the solution. Otherwise I'm doing a disservice. So instead we use something called tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is just getting into the trenches of how she feels and feeling that along with her. Tactical empathy doesn't mean agreement though either. So if she's acting like that and I don't really agree with it, that doesn't mean that I'm not still going to be empathetic because of what she's going through. So I'll be like, what I'll usually say is, yeah, feels like you're really overwhelmed right now. And to be honest with you, I can't imagine being a stay-at-home mom. And then all of a sudden now you're a teacher. Like what? Like what? What is going on? I get it. Yeah. So let me ask you this. How can I best support you right now? What feels right? And she'll be like, and she'll tell me, she'll be like, I just need you to listen. Or she's like, you know what? Can I get out of here and go for a run? Can you just handle this math for a minute? Mm-hmm. Or, you know what? And this happened today. I don't need you to do a thing. I just need to vent. Okay. Mm-hmm. And as a man, sometimes taking on those emotions of a woman is very overwhelming to us because we don't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And when we don't know what to do with it, that's why we want to solve. But if you can be a man and just be like, just be there with her. Mm-hmm. Another great thing to do too is never ask the question, why? Why do you feel that way? I never use it because.
Excuse me. I missed in the notes where you have a PhD in
right
women right now, because I feel like these are bombs that you're dropping, and every man should hear this.
I learned it from the school. I learned it from the school of hard knocks. Like I made all these horrible mistakes.
But it's amazing how many guys go through that school of hard knocks and don't learn.
True.
And this is, I think as essential as the reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? If you can teach people how to communicate, it's not just marriages, it's business relationships, it's mm-hmm. kids, it's every relationship that you will have, from the moment that you're born to the moment that you die. If we can learn these simple skills, life gets a whole lot easier.
Indeed.
It does. It really does. And the last point I'll make too is that why, you don't ask people why. Why is a word that was used on us when we were 2 years old. Why are you doing that? Why are you crying? It's like, so why really puts us on the defense. Doesn't matter. And sometimes even if your boss comes to you and be like, hey, why did you send that email? It sounds, even if he's genuinely curious and has no ill will towards you, it feels defensive. Mm-hmm. But if you say, hey, I saw you sent that email. Tell me what's going on. Mm-hmm. So if my wife is acting in a certain way, I'd be like, feels like you're upset. Tell me more. What's going on? So that way it keeps her on the offense. And all I'm trying to do is just gather more and more information so I can just sit in that with her and just support her.
Incredible.
I would love to know, because as a woman, when she says nothing's wrong, what do you say? Now we're playing ping pong.
That's usually my job.
I think we all know the word fine is.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. Fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I got this.
I'm good. I got this.
Fine.
So if my wife is not giving me the answers that I know there's something there, mm-hmm. I won't be like, you're not fine. Yeah. I know you're not fine. Just tell me. Mm-hmm. I'll just be like, you're fine. She'll tell me, like, because so that's a
Pause
mirror,
for dramatic effects.
right? Yeah. So that's a
That's funny.
that's a mirror with leveraging silence,
Yeah.
right? So someone's going to speak up, and it's not going to be me, right? And I'll do that with my kids. If my kids are like, like, I'm fine, Dad. You're fine. All right, no, I'm not fine. All right, this and that. This, so that's a mirror. It's a mirror. So that if you repeat the last 3 words that somebody says with silence,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to usually give you more information.
Yeah.
And if not, she truly doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this or watching this, we've taken so much in just the short amount of time that we've been with Larry, but if you take nothing else out of this podcast, that alone, I think we as parents have this need to talk and talk and talk. And we've forgotten how valuable silence can be, how golden it can be in giving someone the space, especially our kids, to express what it is that they're feeling. And God, I don't know that I couldn't count the number of times that I've done that. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to keep talking because that's going to solve the problem. And it's like, wait, if I leave her alone, she'll eventually come back like, all right, here's the issue.
Yeah. You can't, I think as parents or, because we do want to help and resolve the issue, we keep digging. We keep digging and I think it annoys them and then they become more, the wall goes up higher. And in fact, I think listening or just like you said, reciting the last 3 words of what they said, to lead them open to decide if they want to come and speak more because you're holding them that space.
You are. And I can't take credit for these type of lessons. So Chris Voss, he used to be the chief hostage negotiator for the FBI. He wrote the book, Never Split the Difference. I'm a huge.
I need these books like written down because I
great.
want to
Put them in the
watch.
show notes.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
It's a great book. It's not only for, negotiating with a terrorist. It's I was joking with Chris. He's come on the show twice and I was joking with him. I was like, Chris, this is not like a book on negotiation. This is like a PhD in communication. And he was like, yeah, but if I call it that, nobody would buy it.
And let's acknowledge that negotiating with a 4-year-old is pretty much the same as negotiating with a terrorist.
Pretty much.
Right. I know. It is. It truly is.
Oh man, there should be like an age gap between 4 and 18.
Right.
I remember that there was a Kevin Spacey movie that came out. It's Kevin Spacey, Sam Jackson. And it was, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. It's called The Negotiator.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. And I remember at one point, I think my daughter was like 3 or 4 and I couldn't sleep because I haven't slept since she's been born. And I'm like surfing, TV and I saw that and I'm like, I start watching. I'm like, oh my God, like it's like having children.
Yes, it is. And just as hostile, maybe even more. I don't know. You're right.
Yeah, those Nerf darts
So
hurt.
I want to backpedal a little bit on, first I tip my hat off to where you're at now, but going back to just growing up with no father figure, there's a lot of listeners who don't have a father figure or they're just, they don't have a man in their life for their kids. How did that affect you to like lead you to where you are now? Because I do see a lot of single parents raising these warriors of kids that most of these kids become more successful than the average kids who have parents that are, I would say, and I could be wrong. I don't know the statistics on this, but when I see someone like you, I almost want to know, like, how is your mom? What role does she play? Because it seems like you're very confident in who you are, knowing who you are right now. Because I know you said it took you a little bit, but just identifying with like, hey, I didn't have a dad growing up, and I feel like I need to hold space for other men who, whether they didn't have a dad growing up, and create this where, like you said earlier, like I needed this, so I wanted to hold space for other guys, like. You're learning so much by helping others, but at the same time healing yourself. And what I guess my question is, your mom looking at you now, do you have a relationship with your mom right now?
I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk about it. Unfortunately, my mom really struggled with addiction herself.
Okay.
And, from the time I was a little kid, there was always, alcohol was a big thing in our family.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I won't go into the detail out of respect for her, but I will say this. Okay. there was an incident that happened when one of my kids was 2, and this goes back 10 years ago. And that incident, I mean, there had been countless incidents. I mean, my mom fell down a flight of stairs at my wedding.
Mm.
She was so drunk. I mean, like, and you know what? Here's the thing. I'm 45 years old.
Yeah.
My mom did the best she could with what she had. I truly believe that. My mom did not grow up in the easiest of houses either. It was from what I understand, it was a very guilt-ridden, judgmental home that she grew up in. I think she tried to do the best she could.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she, when life really hit her, unfortunately, like, she turned to alcohol just for the comfort and the soothing of it. So I used to play that blame game, that victim game. I just don't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But just to add some context, there was an incident that happened about 10 years ago. And I told her, I was like, listen, this has gotten to the point now. It's been to the point for a long time, but it's gotten to the point now where now I'm concerned about my family and their safety.
Mm-hmm.
So you can spend time with my kids. However, sorry.
It's okay.
You can
Bring 'em
spend
in,
time.
bring 'em in.
You can spend time with my kids. That's one of the
Love
drunks
it.
right there.
Yeah.
You can spend time with my kids, but I need you to go get help, and I need you to go to rehab of some sort. I need you to go to AA or something. If you're not willing to do that, then we can no longer come around. That's just the way it is. And unfortunately, she told me I was very selfish and I was very judgmental, and how dare I? And
Yeah.
I was like, and so here's how I will describe it. So here's how I will describe it. Is this okay?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
God,
totally
yes.
Okay.
fine.
My
of
daughter's
course.
right there. We've got
Aw. Hi.
So, hang on.
He's like, give me some headsets, Dad.
So this is Lawson. He is my 6-year-old. So, it just really kind of got up to the point with us that it was no longer safe. And unfortunately, like, the way I view it now, there's a lot of guilt that I have, a lot of guilt that's associated with that. At the same time, like, I just kind of feel like it's my cross to bear because, she's still in a pretty bad place. So if any incident were to happen again, that's my fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's nobody's fault but my own.
Yeah.
So it's really about safety at this point
Mhm.
versus, so I unfortunately no, to answer
Yeah.
your question.
Yeah. Well, I asked the only reason why is because for me, I have my parents growing up, they grew up with certain habits, whether it was alcoholism, my dad, and drugs. And I used to go to AA meetings with him. And then just both my parents smoked, which is yucky. But I think for me, just seeing their relationship pattern and where I am now and what I want to be, I literally I feel like I broke a generational curse. Like, it stopped the whole repetitive stuff that I ended up seeing, and I started a whole new book. And I feel like you just started that whole new, like, I don't want my kids to see this. I don't want my kids to be around this. Like, I want to start and paint the picture of what a real artwork should look like, what a real family or legendary marriage looks like, what dads should look like. And I think that's amazing. Like, it takes a lot of courage to do it. But it's very empowering, and it's amazing that you get to have, that you get to do this with 500 members. Like, I want to be a member. It's awesome. I'm like the only girl
I
there.
think you, I
think the guys would be very distracted if you jumped on a Zoom call. I'm just being real with you.
I'd be a cap and sunglasses and mustache.
So Larry, I think back to when I first, found out I was going to be a dad, and I asked one of my good friends who I thought was a good dad, how do you become a good dad? And he said, you just choose to be. And in the beginning, that sounded like one of those great Hollywood answers. Oh, that's it. I just choose to be a good dad. Now I'm a good dad. And what I found out is that's as far from the truth as possible. So when we're talking to single parents out there who are probably struggling, they're struggling with everything from time management to, issues with their ex, all of the, the compounding problems that happen in a successful marriage are, or even worse in a divorce situation. How do you recommend parents just begin that journey of, hey, I want to be better at this, and what are the steps that you took, and how do you encourage people to take, the steps that you went through to find this path towards being a better parent?
Sorry, that's my dog now in the background. That's a really good question. Here's what I'll tell you about dads and parents just in general. We suffer in silence, and isolation is the enemy of excellence. And here's the funny thing, right? And this doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, dad or mom, right? Somebody asks you, "Hey, how's everything going?" "Oh, fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, busy, busy. Yeah." We're good though. Everything's great. Have you seen my Facebook? All highlight reel. Everything's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's unfortunate because, parenting is a very, very tough job. And a lot of us feel very, very alone. But what we don't realize is that the person I'm going to my son's first seventh grade football game tonight. He's been playing for 4 years, but seventh grade football game, first one tonight. The parents that you're shoulder to shoulder with in the stands, man, they're going through
6 feet
this.
apart from.
Or so,
Quiet, be careful.
Well played, Evan. I love it. But yeah, the ones who are shoulder to shoulder with you, man, they're going through the same stuff,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so understanding number one that you are not alone, right? And understanding that, hey, you can be authentic and find a community, like that's why I like the mastermind environment so much, because you can be raw, you can be authentic, you can share your wins, and you can share the things that are terrible, right? And that's usually met with like, "Hey, I see you, I get it. Have you thought of this? Or have you tried that? Or like, I remember going through that. Have you, and we did this and this and this." I think when you can dive into other people's experiences, it makes you a better learner. And whatever valley it is that you're going through within parenting or your marriage or anything like that, if you have a mentor or somebody in your life or a group of people in your life that can give you maybe a point to a North Star or maybe a different strategy, it makes all the difference. And I'll finish up with this part. I think for most men, and I'm sure women are the same way, I feel like when you're trying to navigate the waters of your career, your body, your fitness, your mentality, your emotions, your finances, raising kids, like all these things, a lot of times, depending on where you're at, you feel like you're in this dark room all by yourself, and you're desperately looking for the light switch. Like, how do I get to this next spot? And your face hits the wall, you trip over a shoe, like you can't see anything. And what it's like when you get around people who have walked in your shoes, or just even other parents who are walking through it, it's almost like someone kind of tapped you on the shoulder, be like, "Hey, 10 paces to the right, turn left 3 paces, 6 feet up, or I'm sorry, 3 feet up to the left, there's the light switch." And that's what it feels like. And you're like, "Oh, okay, now I have the map." And that reduces stress, that reduces anxiety. It's like, man, if I know where I'm going, it feels really good to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Larry, so you touched on something, and I'm really curious. Is this a modern society problem where we're afraid to just reach out and say, "Hey, I need a hand here"? And I kind of use social media as a context for this, but it's the highlight reel, right? It's everything's great, and here's our most recent vacation to Maui, but we're drowning in credit card debt, and our relationship's fantastic, but we haven't slept in the same room together for 6 months, type of thing. So, in your opinion, is that a relationship thing? Is that a guy thing where we're just not willing to say, "Man, I'm hurting, I need some help"? And in that context, what are you seeing through your mastermind or through your work, as far as how do you empower people to be a little bit more vulnerable and say, "Yeah, man, it sucks right now"?
That is such a good question. So I'll share the ask for help thing, because I heard you say ask for help. Those 3 powerful, powerful words. I've been doing the podcast now for 5 years. We've done 600 episodes, and I've had the honor, and I say this very humbly, not bragging. I like the guys who have come on the show, like Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, like, some of these elite operating Navy SEALs, right? And you're like, I can't even believe I'm talking to this person, right? And at the same time, like, you ask them, like, "Hey, how have you been so successful?" I mean, Jocko came on, he's like, "I ask for help when I need it." That's what you do in the teams. Like, we ask for help. We get nothing done by ourselves. And that's the first thing you learn in BUDS. In fact, if you try to do everything on your own, the instructor, the master chiefs will try to get you out.
Yeah.
If you're like the sole winner, right? Everything's about the team. So if you're hurting, you ask for help. That's one of the strongest things that you can do. And I started thinking, I was like, dude, if a bad Navy SEAL can say, ask for help. Why can't we? Right. And to ask your question, answer your question about, vulnerability, authenticity, and that kind of thing. In our everyday life, right? So building a band of brothers, building authenticity, building vulnerability within people, that's another skill. Stephen Mansfield came on the show. He wrote the book Building a Band of Brothers. He just released another book called Men on Fire. And what he talks about is building that connection and that vulnerability and that authenticity is a skill. And how you do it is you can do it in a masculine way. So like Evan, if you and I are having coffee, and this is exactly how it would go down, right? We'd be talking about, oh, did you see what Trump just tweeted out? And man, how's work? Yeah, you good? How's the kids?
Catch the game last week.
Yeah, catch the game. Yeah, whatever. Right, exactly. So here's how you don't be authentic with a man and be like, Evan, I just need to cry for a second. All right, just hang on. I just need to know something, and you'd be like, what's wrong with you? Yeah. Right. But here's how I think you can be authentic and masculine at the same time. So I'd be like, hey, Evan, dude, I've noticed, like, seriously, you like really fit, man. Like looks like you've been throwing around the weights. And to be honest with you, man, I'm really frustrated. I feel like I'm working my rear end off. Like my nutrition is on point. Like I'm going to the gym and I'm not losing body fat. I'm not losing weight. Like, I don't know what is going on. So dude, please tell me, like, what is your secret? And I mean, you tell me how you receive that. In my experience, like guys are like, wow, that's a huge compliment. And you just got really real with me about something that you feel that you're not really on point with. And what an honor that you've asked me.
Well, I think you, sorry, go ahead, Larry.
No, that I was pretty much done. Go ahead.
Well, and I think one of the things that, you touched on earlier is we're problem solvers, guys,
right.
Instinctually. So now you've just come in with, you complimented me and now you're asking me to solve a problem. Like, this is my sweet spot. Like, let's do it. Let's go work out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you build like that trust. That's how you build that vulnerability and authenticity, is that it's actually, if you ask for help, especially from another man, it's a compliment. Like we love that stuff. We're like, well, I don't really know how to do that, but that's how you do that. And the other thing too, is that you sort of celebrate that as a win. Like if somebody came and asked me, I'd be like, dude, I'm honored, man. Thank you for the question. Here's what's worked for me. And so I think that that's how you build that trust and that authenticity.
Can I ask a question coming from a woman, and you're saying men asking for help? How do men, and this is to you too, how do men feel when your partner is asking you for help and it's a female? And it's not just something physical or labor, like, hey, I need help with like whatever it may be. And it's just,
Larry?
Because sometimes it could be a nuisance where you're like, oh, here we go with the emotions.
Well, that's communication, right? Like that's absolutely communication. And I think, I can speak to this. No, Larry, I'd love for you to answer that.
So, I mean, great question. So if my wife is like, hey, I could really use your help with something, there's that part of me I'm like, okay, what is it? You know what I mean? Like, because I don't know what's coming. But I've known my wife for long enough. I've known her for 24 years. We've been married for 17. And I know my wife's, the hardest thing that she does is ask for help. So when she asks me for help, I know that she's struggling. Like I know like she probably is at her wit's end. So if she's like, hey, can I ask for your help on something?
Yeah.
I'll be like, yeah, what's going on? Be like, I'm exhausted. Is there any way like you could just put the two little kids down to bed tonight? I'm like, done. Yeah, of course. So when she asks for that, I know that that's hard for her. So I celebrate that as well. And my wife is so good about like, she's not a nagging person. So she's never like one of those people like the grass needs to be cut, weeds need to be pulled out of the mulch.
Yeah.
Like so when she asks for help, man, I perk up, I listen.
Yeah. I'm not one to ask for help. So when I do, it takes a lot of courage for me to ask for help. So I think that my boyfriend does like when I do ask for help.
I think that's a relationship issue, right? And as we struggle with relationships with our kids, we struggle with relationships with boyfriends, girlfriends, as single parents out there listening or venturing into those, as, married people, whatnot, is, being vulnerable, right? And we've been taught for whatever reason, for whatever ass backwards reason, that vulnerability is a weakness. And, it's just simply not. It's there is we're communal people. We were
Mhm.
nomadic together. It was, the lone warrior just never worked unless you're Chuck Norris, and then it's okay.
Mhm.
But other than that, it's like, yeah, we are designed to be in a community. We're designed to thrive in a community, and that simple, recognition that we can reach out to someone and say, hey, I need help. Whether that's, can you help me move a couch, or dude, I just need someone to talk to for 20 minutes.
Yeah. You have a teenager, correct?
I have a 14-year-old and almost a 13-year-old.
How is that, like them seeing what you're doing, and then, because I have a great relationship with my daughter, and I ask her for help sometimes and she loves it. Sometimes she's like, Mom, I got homework to do, or now, but she really does love when I ask her for help. So I'd love to see that now that you're having this strong dad role. How is that affecting your kids, and how do you see that they're like responding to it?
So, I think, like I said, if I wasn't doing this, I mean, this is kind of like my therapy. It's kind of like where I go to, it's where I have to stay on point because I screw up a lot,
Mhm.
a lot, and they'll tell you, so
Welcome to the club, man.
right. I mean, before this show, even before we started recording, my 14-year-old came in here before he went to cross country practice. I'm like, hey, man, I need to apologize to you. And he's like, what, why? And I was like, the past 2 nights, you've asked me to come down to your room and because he learned how to play guitar. He's like, you want to show me what you're playing on guitar? And I went down there, but I think I probably gave you the vibe that I didn't want to be there. And he's like,
Mhm.
yeah, a little bit. And I was like, I'm sorry about that. I was like, let me just give you a nugget here of what goes, because I don't know what time you guys wake up. I wake up at 5 every day.
Mhm.
I train from 5 to 7.
Mhm.
So like by the time like 8:30 rolls around, I start to like just go down.
Mhm.
And so I I was like, listen, I was like, you've known me for long enough. And you joke with me, but when 8 p.m. rolls around, like I'm starting to really wind down. And I was like, and last night, especially, I was putting the littles to bed and they always wanted something. And like, I'd leave the room. They wanted me to come back in for something else. And I had to get there. Like, then one of them had to pee. And then I'm just like, oh my God, like, I just want to go take my shower so I can go to bed. And I was like, and then you came and asked me, hey, do you want to come down to my room and ask, to listen to me play? And I was like, sure. And I was like, and that's the way I answered you, which was the wrong way to answer you. I was like, I just want to tell you, I'm sorry about that. I did want to listen to you. I enjoyed it. I was like, but you know how when you're running cross country and you're just doing lap after lap after lap after lap, and you don't get that break between those sets. And he's like, yeah, it exhausts me. I was like, well, sometimes that's how I feel. Like I can't even get to the next thing before someone else needs something else. And I was like, so you just kind of caught me at that bad time. So, I'm the first to apologize, but to answer your question, I think what they see is this. I'm able to give them a better part of me since I'm doing this, and I'm able to show up for them in a more, like, for instance, like even doing this podcast, like it makes me pumped up to go hang out with them after this.
Mhm.
So I think that they like seeing it, but they're old enough now where they see me lose my patience. They're like, oh yeah, Dad Edge. All right. So it's like they'll call me out and then we kind of like laugh about it. I'm like, yeah, that's right. It's not perfection, my friend.
And look,
That's
you just
funny.
hit the nail on the head, Larry. There's no such thing. Perfect
Mhm.
parent does
No,
not exist. And so, I think we have to rid ourselves of that belief that there is such a thing. Stop holding ourselves up, to the neighbor or the person on Instagram or Facebook. Like, what you see online is complete and total BS. Yeah, it's okay to fail. It's what you do after you fail that really matters.
exactly. You couldn't have said it better. And I think that's unfortunate because so many of us think that that's the way we should be operating.
Mhm.
It's like that level of perfection. And it's a practice, right? I mean,
It's like
it's not a,
keto. It's unsustainable.
yeah, that's right.
And I apologize to all my keto friends out there, but I'm sorry. I just want a loaf of bread sometimes.
Goodness. It's funny. I get it just because I don't know how he does it. But I think it's awesome. I think it's that just you saying that, I've caught myself a couple times, and me apologizing myself, to my teenage daughter, like that shows a lot of humility. Like it shows like, hey, like mommy's just trying to like go through life. And I think those are the stuff that they're going to remember forever. Because I don't remember my mom ever apologizing to me. In fact, my mom never said I love you. She didn't. She always showed me. Her love language was acts of services, and so, and her mom never said I love you to her. So I grew up not knowing, like, I never heard my mom say I love you. And so in my mind, I'm thinking I didn't know anything different because I knew she loved me, but she never verbally said it. And I think it was until like in our couple of years, like into college, I was like, Mom, you never said I love you. You never say I love you at all. And she's like, I haven't. And I was like, no. She's like, well, you know I do. And I'm like, well, say it. I want to hear you say it. But it's like until like, and those are the things that we grow up like it, we don't realize it, and we, hold things down as far as like me not asking for help. It's just, it's kids, they act and they learn from our behavior. And so we are essentially so responsible for our kids. You have no idea.
Larry, you got a couple books
Yeah.
out, right?
I do. Dad Edge. It's I laugh about it because it's so outdated now. Just because like I wrote that book when we first started podcasting. I'm like, oh, I think I can come up with like 9 simple ways, to improve your patience and be better. And now I'm just like, man, I feel like the information we've learned has gone so far past what I wrote in that first book. I need to write another one. And yeah, I wrote a kid's book too.
What's the name of the kid's book?
Daddy Will Always Love You and Protect You. So it's just a book. It's one of those, it's definitely a book. I mean, I think a lot of guys sometimes have, it's uncomfortable for some of us to like really sort of let out like how important that kid is to us and like how much we love them, how much we're going to protect them, like how much they mean to us, how much we even think about them, right? When they don't even know it. So like the book is meant for a dad to read it to their kid so they can actually say the word out loud so that kid can receive it. And then for that dad to also hear those words like over and over and over again. So yeah, it like the illustration is like 2 bears. 2 bears, and there's like hanging out. There's like it's funny too. So yeah, I wrote that book too.
That's awesome. It's funny. I was 27 and my best friend of like, we've been best friends for 30 years now. He was the first of us to have kids. And I remember, this was my workout buddy, right? We'd go to the gym and then afterwards we'd go grab a couple beers and, hang out and chat. And after his son was 6 months old, he'd be like, nah, I want to get home and be with my kid. And I'm like, he just eats, sleeps and shits. Like, what do you, what do you get? And I couldn't just, I couldn't connect with him on that level. I didn't understand what it meant to have that desire to want to be around your kids so much. And then, then I found myself doing the same thing when my daughter was born. People were like, hey, do you want to go do something? I'm like, nah, I'm going to watch her sleep for 3 hours. And I hope that didn't sound creepy.
She's like,
she's right there. She's like, I'm just
right. She's right over
there. Like that's going to cost me a therapy bill or 2 later on. So Larry, what's next? You've got the Dad Edge Alliance. That's the 500-person mastermind. How are you outside of the mastermind? How are you really trying to engage fathers, and how can our followers really get the most out of working with you if they wanted to, or what resources can you give our followers or listeners to really kind of up their parenting game?
Yeah, so I appreciate you asking. I mean, you can find everything we're doing at gooddadproject.com. We have a lot of free resources over there that, connecting better with your wife, connecting better with your spouse. Actually, we actually have a lot of women followers, which surprised me. How to connect better with your kids. We've got a group on Facebook called Dad Edge, Real Dads with Purpose. And we just use that. I mean, there's thousands of dads in that group. And we use that as a way just to communicate, it's our free group. So it's just a great resource for men to just interact and ask questions of each other. And then, and I got to admit, we did a really good job of setting the tone in that group. So you're not going to find like these trolls and these hecklers and like, oh, just man up, and grow, it's actually been it's been incredible to see the high level of integrity and respect that these guys have. And there's thousands of them. As far as the mastermind goes, we've been doing that now for almost 5 years, and we've got, like I said, almost 500 members. I think we have 30 mastermind call teams that we do per week. So we have a lot. Yeah. Per week. We've got 50 plus coaches in there. And that's what we really do. We help men optimize those 5 dimensions that I mentioned earlier. And the funny thing is too, as you see these things evolve, I've seen more people join the mastermind because they're very curious about the marriage aspect, and not even so much the marriage aspect, but they're like, what is the toolkit here? Like, what are the skill sets?
Mm-hmm.
And so we find men very curious in there, but that's probably if you want to find out more about that, you can go to gooddadproject.com/alliance.
Cool, and we'll put all that information in the show notes,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, so you can track this. I think, obviously the Good Dad Project, the Dad Alliance, is really focused on men, but there's so much that all of our listeners can get out of, and whether that's building a better marriage, better interpersonal relationships with future relations after your divorce, whether that's with your kids, there's so much that comes out of this, and I got to tell you, I applaud what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
There's a lot of the dad stuff going on out there, which is exactly what you said. Just man up and, like reclaim your masculinity. I'm like, is that really the answer? Yeah.
It's more, it's funny, if I could speak on that for 1 second. A lot of guys who come and apply for the mastermind, they're like, what are the guys like in there? I was like, they're humble, they're hungry, and they have emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And like, well, what does that mean? I was like, well, they're humble, so there's really no crazy egos in there. I was like, they're hungry, they're super motivated to learn. And I was like, in the emotional intelligence, the best way I can describe it is this: if you have a question and you bring it up on the mastermind, or if you have a question and you post it in the Alliance Facebook group, you will never, ever see a man grow a set of balls and man up, ever. Because here's the thing, that's terrible advice. Terrible. And the reason that guy is probably saying that, he has no clue what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like he's out of skill set. So that's like going to your doctor and it's like, hey, Evan, you need to go get healthy. And you're like, what does that mean? You need to go get healthy. Well, is it high cholesterol, or do I have diabetes? Do I have cancer? Like, just go get healthy. And that doesn't help, right? And neither does man up, right? So skill set is what helps.
Yeah.
Parenting, like anything else, great relationships, it's all about the tools in the toolbox. And it's not only having the tools, but then it's knowing how and when to use them. And I think to a certain extent that comes with age, at least with me it has. I'm getting a little bit better at it. I didn't have those skills in my marriage at all. And that's a big reason why, obviously I'm not married, but I think that these are the things that we need to be teaching. This is like 5th grade. I remember, when did you have the talk in elementary school where they split the boys and the girls? And, I think that was 3rd or 4th grade for me. When did you have that?
It was in middle school. Definitely wasn't in elementary school.
I was in 5th grade.
Okay, 5th grade. So,
5th grade.
And I'm like, instead of talking like boys have penis, girls have vagina, I'm like, here's how you communicate with people.
Yeah.
Here's how you balance a freaking checkbook. Like, I don't.
Well,
great.
now,
I do know what the capital of Cambodia is, but that does not help me balance my checkbook or have a great relationship with.
Yeah.
I think now that we're all home now, those are the things that we should apply to our kids and teach them young, now that we have more of control of their physical well-being and not 8 hours in a school that's not teaching them anything that's important.
The Dad Edge homeschool protocol.
Yeah, go for it.
There's a lot of yelling that goes on right now because we're out of skill sets. Like, that's what you do when you're out of skill sets. You're like, just do it, just do your work. So yeah, because we're on new ground. We're on new ground.
Yeah.
Do you ever see? Do you remember Matt Foley, the Chris Farley character from
Oh
Saturday
my
Night
gosh!
Live?
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
like the motivational speaker. I found myself turning into that guy. I'm like,
Right.
no yelling. Like, what am I doing?
Oh yeah, classic. Yeah, that's pretty much
divorced.
That is pretty much our house, dealing with our kids. So
it's a lot going on right now. Thank you so much for just getting on the podcast with us. I learned so much from. I want to read those 2 books now because I love reading, and you brought up a lot of things that I think all of us can relate to, all of us would need, and this is probably one of my favorite podcasts that we've done.
oh man, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
definitely. It was very insightful.
Larry, I think that there's a wealth of information in what it is that you're doing and your experiences. So that's always hard to pack that into a 45-minute podcast. So if you're up for it, we'd love to have you back on. I think there's a lot more that we could uncover here, and we're going to get a ton of questions on this one. So maybe if you're up for it, we'll do another one with some Q&A from the audience.
Oh, I would love it. I'd be honored. Hey,
awesome.
my schedule is yours. We could definitely do that.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we'll put all of Larry's information in the show notes, but we've got the Dad Edge, and it's the Dad Edge podcast now, right?
Yes, sir. Dad Edge podcast.
Dad Edge podcast, the Dad Edge Alliance. We'll put all of his information in the show notes. Highly recommend you follow him. He's got a pretty cool, social presence there as well. So,
awesome.
other than that, I think that this has been a fantastic one. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll hopefully talk soon because I'm going to have a list of questions now.
Can't wait. I can't wait. Let's do it.
I know. You're up for the challenge.
I am.
Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another edition of the God, I've screwed it up twice today. Like
Single Parent Daily.
Single Parent Daily. Yes. And this is
Chatty.
and I don't know who I am anymore. So I think I'm Evan, but maybe we'll fix that in post or it'll go in the blooper reel. All right, guys, we'll catch you next week.
Bye.